Welcome, everyone, to a special episode of Cinema 100. As always, I'm Robert Gifford, William Delzeith, best friend, co-host of the show. How we doing, Will?
Oh, doing pretty good. Pretty excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. We're kind of going outside of our norm, not something that we have done this year. We have established ourselves as going back through all the old movies from 1927 on to present day, and we are currently recording 1929 films. But we've just finished up 1928, and I'm excited to get into the next year's worth of movies. But we thought we would do a mini episode, something special because it is Oscar season. Oscars are coming up next Sunday. Will and I decided that we would sit down and deliver to you our top 10 favorite films of 2023. And then we're also going to deliver what we believe to be the Oscar predictions for next Sunday's show. Will, you said it already. You're excited for this one, man. So am I. Why do you think? Is it just because we've been watching such old stuff for so long now that it's kind of nice to talk about something a little more contemporary? Or what's your excitement level and why?
Yeah, no, it's a little bit of that for sure. But also, we got to show our street cred here, right? We're not just people who are pretending to like movies. I was counting a little bit ago. I've watched 77 movies from 2023. So
Oh,
I
wow.
gotta show off my watching here, my watch list. So
Dude, I'm okay. So I should just come right out the get go. I am nowhere near that. I was counting up my movies and I was going through the list of 2023 movies on Letterboxd. And I mean, I was just scrolling and scrolling of the movies that I missed, right? And of the
yeah.
movies that I missed, there was really only two that I really wanted to see, but I only seen like 30 movies this year,
Oh, okay.
which was shocking to me because I thought I'd seen a lot more. I definitely felt like I attended the movie theaters a lot
Mm,
more in this past year than I have since COVID, has happened. Um,
right.
so yeah, 77, very impressed with 77. So
You
maybe
definitely.
when we get to our top 10, now I'm a little nervous that we might not have as many crossovers as I originally thought.
Yeah, I'm sure there's definitely some crossover there. Probably half of those movies are all stuff that you throw on Netflix when you're bored and ends up not being very good. Looking at the bottom of my list right now, The Mother with Jennifer Lopez. I'm sure you didn't watch that. I did. Not very good.
No, but
That's
I
deeper
do
in
know
my
what that movie is. See, that's at least I can say that I still pay attention to what's out there. I'm just,
list.
whether or not it tickles the old fancy. Uh, I'm someone that still loves like bad TV, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what I mean by that is I have a comfort zone with old sitcoms, the 90s and 2000s. And like I
yeah,
have 10 or shows that I just on repeat will watch on a loop to the day I die. King of
yeah,
Queens, Friends, Seinfeld, How I Met Your Mother, The Office. It just kind of rotates, right?
yeah.
But you're someone that when you're sleeping, you'll throw on a movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love a bad action movie. So I've got if you get curious, go look at my letterbox at the 2-star movies, 2.5-star movies. There are going to be some likes in there still, even though I know it's a shit movie. So
Yeah, but it hits your palate just right.
for sure.
I think we should get that stuff out of the way right now. Will is at cinema underscore 100 is the overall page, right? Will, what
Yeah,
is your letterbox page specifically?
yeah. It's just my name. It's Will Delzeith, Cinema 100. So
Okay, Will
that's pretty
Delzeith.
much the only place you're. Yeah, it's pretty much the only place you're going to find me on social. Maybe on YouTube if you really get curious, you can find me at my name. But other than that, I'd stay off that stuff.
Yeah, in the deep dark, places on YouTube, you can see Will having back and forth comments with people. I'm sure it's out there.
Well,
Um,
that's my burner.
let's keep our audience waiting no longer. Let's talk about overall 2023 and just what you think where the state of the business is. There was two strikes that took place, right?
Mhm.
Um, and strikes that needed to happen because there's something coming that's already kind of here with the artificial intelligence and the way we go about making movies in the future.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, just talk about movies. The class of movies that came out in 2023 compared to the predecessing years. Where do you think we're at?
Yeah, so it kind of feels like we're rolling back just a little bit back into like those late 90s, early 2000s where we'd get some genre films like I was looking at my watch list earlier this year. There's just movies on here that have kind of fallen out of favor, don't get made much anymore, like Air, the Matt Damon and Ben Affleck movie, No Hard Feelings. Jennifer Lawrence had that movie this year. The Holdovers, is up for an Oscar. Those are movies that haven't really been made over the last 10 years, as kind of Marvel and Star Wars kind of took over movie making, right? So I feel like this year kind of had a little bit of a rollback into that, like, here's a genre film. This only took $20 million to make. Here, let's just go ahead and make something like this. And all three of those that I brought up are all pretty good movies. Like, I was glad that I watched them. Not going to make my top 10 list, but all pretty good movies. So I'm kind of excited about where we're at with movies. I feel like this was a really good year. I've got, I'm a generous rater, but yeah, I've got a lot of movies that I really liked from this last year. So I think we're in a pretty good place. It's going to be interesting to see if there's like a gap in movies over the next 6 months where there were some production issues with the strikes that were going on. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good year.
Dude, I am entirely in agreement with you. I loved 2023, especially for the fact that you said it right. The late 90s, early 2000s was kind of like that sweet spot for me of the reason why I started falling in love with movies. You know what I mean? There was all these different genres, all these different perspectives, all these different types of stories that were coming out, and it's like you're not pigeonholed into the same type of thing over and over and over again. And if you're someone like me that still, I don't have kids and I still, one of them, my church is the theater going experience. You know what I mean? And not just theater going experience, but sitting in a room with other people watching and sharing a movie. I've grown to kind of have a little more appreciation for miniplexes because it's filled, right? I've
Right.
seen American Fiction on which is up for an Oscar for Best Picture. I seen that in a miniplex and it was packed. If I take that and I go to a bigger theater, it might lose something. I still want the big theater experience, but I think more importantly, I want the community in the room with me. I also feel like this year there was chances, like big risk taken with movies, and something
Okay.
that I think last year, 2, 3, 4 years ago, even a decade back, wouldn't get the green light anymore. You know what I mean? And I think it's because finally, and Paul Dano just mentioned this, and it's something that I agree with, but it's taken almost an entire generation to catch up with. There's superhero fatigue finally, right?
Oh, fine.
And because there is, and I've never been someone outside of Batman who gives a damn about superhero movies. I want human interest pieces, right?
Right.
And I feel like with Paul Dano mentioning that, it hit me, and I was like, dude, that is so accurate of a just a symbol of why 2023 was different, because there is a decline in just maybe an appetite for movies right now. I still want them to be made, but just not at the pace that they were being
Yeah.
made at. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was until Avengers Endgame, like I was there for all those. I was going to the theater. I really enjoyed that. That period of time when the movies that were being made were pretty to really good. But there's something that kind of has happened over the last couple of years. It's not just fatigue. Some of these movies are getting bad, and I think it's because what kind of happened was there, especially with Marvel, there was a formula, right? Like, they knew what was working. They were making $1 billion on every single movie that they put out, so they had their boxes they were checking, and those boxes got tired, and they got lazy, and the VFX department, I don't know how much you pay attention to that, but they were getting, there was a limited amount of VFX companies working over COVID, and they were overworked. So they were putting out stuff that just wasn't ready. And, as much as I like that period of time with those superhero movies, I like grown up adult movies where we can think about things that happen in our lives and not have to put a cape on them. Right.
Right. Right.
So,
No, I well said. I did pay attention to the kind of that down period in COVID where they were just like inundated with all this work that they had to take on. Um,
yeah.
this is why I love Nolan so much, right? Are Nolan's movies perfect? No. Does he seem to, have characters that seemingly aren't fleshed out at times? Sure. Especially female characters, right? He
Mhm.
that's a fair criticism of Nolan. But what I do love is that he has a great admiration for the craft, and he doesn't believe that you should be panning out a movie every year or panning out, put the time into each piece of art that you're making and make sure that you've perfected it at least the best that you can, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then send it out to the viewer and then start that process over again. As a studio head, I get it. Give me more. These things are, that's their business. That's their jobs. They're trying to make as much money as possible. I get it. It just, as a moviegoer for the last 10 years, one of the movies that I loved this year, at least I love what it wants to be, is a movie called The Good Person, right? It's got, what's his name? The guy from Scrubs. Zach Braff, right? Zach Braff. He tickles me right in the right spots. Like, I love Wish I Was Here. I love that movie with him and Natalie Portman from the 90s. I love that, right? That almost to a point where, like, he's secretly in my top 5 just, like, because he hits me in the right spots.
Right.
Those movies don't get made 10 years ago. Those movies, and if they are, they're straight to Netflix or they're straight to whatever. They're just not made with the type of heart that they need. And I want to see them in the theater. I want to share that experience with someone. So with all that being said, Will, I'm going to let you have the floor first. I think we should get to our top 10 movies of 2023. But before we do that, I want to know your 11 through 15. Just tell me your first 5 out. If they made my list, I'm not going to mention it. But just tell me what your first 5 that didn't quite make the list. And tell me, and you can tell me any reasons for why you have them there or any reasons why they couldn't crack the top 10.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'll just, no particular order. I've got 5 here. I'll start with Past Lives. Past Lives was a really good movie. First-time director, Celine Song. I thought the last half hour was just incredible. Just about love that was, just that those little moments where love you think can work, but it goes a different direction. I thought it was a little slow, didn't quite get me all the way there, so didn't quite make my top 10. Killers of the Flower Moon, another honorable mention. Love Martin Scorsese. I love Leo DiCaprio. Thought Lily Gladstone was incredible here. It was 3 hours and 15 minutes, and it kind of felt like it. I don't usually complain about length with movies, but if you sit down and watch Dune, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it doesn't feel like it. Killers of the Flower Moon just kind of felt, and it also felt a little worn, right? Something that I'm pretty familiar with as a story, pretty familiar with as a narrative, and felt like maybe he could have done a little bit better with it. Third, this is an honorable mention only because I haven't seen it. I feel like it might be in my top 10 if I had gotten to it. American Fiction. I just couldn't quite get this one into my schedule. I'm a huge fan of Jeffrey Wright, and I have a feeling this one's really good. Just didn't get a chance to see it. All of Us Strangers. Watched this last night. Paul Mescal and then the hot priest from Fleabag. I can't remember his name. But this one was really kind of like a fairy tale. I wasn't expecting. And it was really quiet and really kind of methodical about feeling out the main character that I'm sorry, I can't think. Andrew Scott maybe is his name.
Andrew Scott. Yep.
Yeah. It's just a really interesting movie that it's one of those movies that may not have been made 10 years ago. So I was, really close to my top 10. And then last is a movie called The Creator. It's a movie by Gareth Edwards, has John David Washington in it. It's a science fiction movie about AI, and sometimes that can be worn. But man, this movie's beautiful. I thought it was just like, it looked great. Gareth Edwards really understands scale. So when something looks like a ship looks big or an explosion looks big, it feels big. And I just thought it was really interesting, kind of the story it was trying to tell about how we otherize people, how we otherize people that are different than us. And just thought it was almost there, but not quite. So.
Yeah, actually, I have one of my films. We have one crossover in our 11 through 15. Oh, okay. But real quick, I not familiar with All of Us Strangers. I just listening to you talk about it, that's something that I'm going to write down, put on my watch list, because that's just looking it up here. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's right up your alley. It's a love story, and it's the two lead actors are just phenomenal together, and definitely worth a watch.
For sure, for sure. Well, I do have them in order because I rank everything. I'm just kind of nerd like that. I want to say this, that everything I have 11 through 15 here did get a 4-star from me out of 5 on Letterboxd. And like you said, there's, and I'm not someone who does rate generously. Now, I will say that I do have kind of a soft spot for the things that I like. And for example, A Good Person, probably a movie that you could argue with me is anywhere between 3 and 4. 3.5 kind of being my bottom baseline. But to me, I got a 4 because, again, like I said, I love that this movie's being made in 2023. I love that it was in theaters in 2023. And I love what it wants to be. There's a message there behind it, but like the cast here was pretty great. You got, Morgan Freeman, which how many more great Morgan Freeman performances are we going to get? And here we get a really solid one. I don't know. It's kind of hard to rate Morgan Freeman, right? Because in his later acting career, he's kind of the same character in everything he does, right? Yeah. Which is fine because it's still Morgan Freeman. And then we get Florence Pugh, who just seems to be everywhere right now. And rightfully so. She brings complexities to characters that, other characters might not be able to bring, or other actresses that are, in her same type of, kind of generational class. So I really enjoyed A Good Person. I will say this is a movie that like, I was like, man, before I got there, without even knowing we were going to do this, I want this to be in the top 10, right? I want this to be in there for me. This movie has been kind of replaced by another movie that did get there. But this one just didn't. Number 14, American Fiction. Will, it was a very good movie. To me, it lacks the layers that I think it needs in order to crack the top 10. But as far as like structure and story and like Jeffrey Wright's performance, there's a lot of, not just Jeffrey Wright. So like, I'm a guy that comes off of This Is Us. So I love This Is Us TV show. I'm telling you right now, Sterling K. Brown is going to win an Oscar someday. I don't think it's going to be this year, but this man, I love This Is Us, but he jumps off the screen with his performances, man. And even in the small, like I'd say he's in this movie, maybe a collective of like 15, 20 minutes. He matters. He makes it work. You know what I mean? He matters. Number 13 was The Color Purple. They kind of did a remake of this in a musical realm, and just the performances that you get there. Not everything works. Not everything works. Who's the gentleman that was in the movie Rustin this past year? He's up for an Academy Award.
Oh, geez. I've got those up.
I forget his name.
Coleman Domingo. Domingo.
So he plays the antagonist in this movie, but does so with such a conviction that like you want to see him get kind of his coming to's by the end of this movie. And they do it in a really good way that kind of makes him, when he makes his comeback, you feel for him. You're glad that he does. Number 12 for me was Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, man. I really enjoyed this movie almost to a point where it was originally in the top 10. And if it wasn't for the last month of me catching up with some of these Oscar pictures, it was in there. And I was clinging to it, Will. You get just great performances, another one by Jake Gyllenhaal. And then the gentleman that, I'm just not familiar with his work enough to know his name. But this is my favorite Guy Ritchie movie in a long time. And I know you're a fan of Guy Ritchie. So, and number 11, and I'm curious to see if this one will crack your top 10. It was there as well. Just coming back to the idea of like movies were taking risks this year. That's Saltburn. Saltburn was something that like just completely caught me off guard, but in the best way possible. I think there's 2 other movies in kind of the same lane as Saltburn that made my top 10 and are just a little bit better. And because of that, I couldn't quite throw it in there, but that was my 11 through 15. So with that being said, Will, why don't you hit us with your number 10, buddy? And real quick, just to kind of explain this to the audience, any movie that we have that's the same. So if Will's number 10 movie happens to be my number 4 movie, we're going to save it and we're going to come back and talk about it at number 4. So he'll give his number 10, and then if it for some reason is on and we cross over, then we'll give my number 10. So go ahead, hit us with your number 10 of 2023.
All right, so I left this one on my number 10, even though I'm only cheating because I love Tom Cruise and I love this series. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning is my number 10. Tom Cruise and Haley Atwell are just absolutely incredible in this movie. The chemistry is like insane. They're so good together. And this is the best action series going. You can't. I know people are fans of John Wick, and I like John Wick, but the choreography in this, the amount of set pieces there are, the VFX being used as a tool on top of practical effects. This series is just, it's incredible. I mean, Fallout before this is a perfect movie. This one's not quite all the way there, but I've got this at 4.5. Everything in my top 10 is going to be 4.5 or above. And the story, Mission Impossible took a weird change or a weird turn when J.J. Abrams came on with the third one. It kind of stopped being just an action series, and you kind of care about the characters a little bit too. It's fast and furious. It's kind of about that family a little bit, and it can be a little corny sometimes. But man, if you like action movies, you can't beat it. If there's a Mission Impossible movie coming out in a year, it's going to be the best action movie of the year. So that's my number 10.
What is your what is it that draws you to action? Because as long as I've known you, you've liked action films, right? Me, I'm someone that I don't get behind an action movie. I like action in my movie as long as it helps, kind of move along the narrative. But like something that is just focuses on action, I can't get behind. But as long as I've known you, you've kind of like loved that. Why?
Yeah. It's just the dude in me, Robert. I can't get rid of him all the way, right? I just can't.
It's the John McClane, right?
Yeah, I'm just drawn to that hero that doesn't care about whether or not he lives or dies. He just wants to save the day. I'm just drawn to that idea. So, seeing Die Hard when I was way, way too young, and Die Hard 2 and all that stuff is just ingrained in me. So I just love a good action movie.
Fair enough, buddy. Go off of that, I did not see that movie because, quite frankly, I've only seen, I think, the first Mission Impossible. I'm not sure I've seen anything since then, but I follow it. And every time a new one comes out, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good this one is. I can't believe how good this one is. And then I'm like, really, is it? And they're like, no, Robert, seriously, this movie is getting better and better for the reasons in which you laid out. I think they made a critical error this year of the release date, right? So that movie came out 1 week before Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer came out. Either somebody there at the studio was trying to bury this movie for whatever reason, or there was just a complete failure, like an oversight of how big they thought Barbenheimer was going to be. When in my opinion, it was like Barbenheimer was like being touted as, that's why it was so successful this year, because people were talking about it months in advance. So I'm just surprised, and maybe you can lend any knowledge on that. Was there going to be a later release date or an earlier one, and it just got stuck here? Why did it come out then?
I think, don't know for 100% here, but I do think that this was done. They were filming this one and parts of because this was originally Dead Reckoning Part 1. They've changed the name of the one that's coming out next year now, but they were filming them both at the same time. So I think I do, maybe we can talk about this when we get to Barbie and Oppenheimer, if Barbie's in your top 10 and Oppenheimer is in your top 10. I'm assuming a couple things there, but Barbie and Oppenheimer, I think kind of how big it was snuck up on us. I think we look back on that and kind of think like, hey, like Barbenheimer was this, inevitability, but I don't look at it like that. I think something happened during those first couple weeks of the movie that kind of sustained Barbenheimer. And I think it was taken for granted.
Sure.
Because Paramount and Tom Cruise are usually pretty on top of things like this when it comes to releases and putting movies out in the theater. So I think it was just, I just don't think they were anticipating it.
No, fair enough. I mean, and there's, I think my level of excitement for both of those movies, because when I remember seeing Greta Gerwig's like the trailer for Barbie, right? I remember thinking to myself, wow, this looks incredibly different. Wow, I can't believe as a male, I'm even interested in like in my excitement level. Like, why am I so excited to see this? Maybe it's Margot Robbie. I don't know if where my crush lies more with Margot Robbie or Ryan Gosling, but like it's just a perfect marriage. And just the way it was being delivered was, but then there's the Nolan movie, right? Every time you get a Nolan movie coming out, he just hits you with like this weird syncope, 15-second teaser. And now we're like, as Nolan diehards, we're ready and talking about a year or two in advance, right? So you're right. I never expected Barbie, especially, to be the highest grossing movie of the year, to break $1 billion. And I'm not sure what I thought Oppenheimer with its runtime was going to be, but I did give it a little more credit than maybe you did. But I guess that's also because I'm not really sure where, I don't pay attention to Mission Impossible and where it falls on the realm. I just know that this was the, 7th installment of the movie?
Yes.
So, and I know obviously Tom Cruise in his big, you called it practical. I'm not sure there's anything practical about what he did, but
he's trying
his
to kill himself
stunts
on screen for us, Robert.
Hey, hats off. Let's go to my number 10. My number 10 is a movie that I kind of alluded to a little bit with why Saltburn didn't make the list, because I think this movie is just so outrageous, and I expect nothing else from the man that has given us gifts such as, Midsummer. I expect nothing more or nothing less than Beau is Afraid. Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, Will. And the tagline is, following the sudden death of his mother, a mild-mannered but anxiety-ridden man confronts his darkest fears as he embarks on an epic Kafkaesque odyssey back home. Will, I have never experienced anything quite like this movie at the movie theater. Maybe, and even the movie that's coming up that I think is in the realm, right? This is bonkers. This is the most unhinged thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't even know how to begin to give a synopsis on this film, because you're watching this movie and you feel for this Beau. You feel for Joaquin Phoenix in his performance, and the way that he delivers his performance, and just the way that the storytelling is done is just, every time you think you've seen the craziest thing in the movie, it trumps itself, and then it trumps itself again. And I'm not really sure what else I can say on it.
Yeah. No, not in my list. I'm surprised to hear it here for you. I love Ari Aster. Hereditary, I'm pretty sure I have it in my top 10 movies of all time. I love that movie. Midsummer, I also love very much. This one just didn't quite work for me in the third act. I think I love this movie up until it was right after, in the second act when he's kind of going through the story of his life.
Yes.
Where he loses his kid to the flood, and I love that scene. Maybe one of my top 5 scenes of the year. I love it. I love it a lot. But after that, things just kind of felt a little too hectic and a little too, I don't know, highbrow. Like Ari Aster knows what he's doing, but no one else can figure it out. It felt like it was a little bit too much like that. So it didn't quite work for me. I think I still ended up, obviously I still liked it. But ended up like 3.5 stars. So not quite there for me.
I admit that in the third act, for a movie that's completely off the rails, this movie goes off the rails. I think for me, he got me back. And the reason I kind of gave it that final nut is just the final scene, right? I liked, sort of what he was trying to say there. I do agree with you prior to that. It's like, you're kind of losing me a little bit, which is why it doesn't get a 4.5 or a 5 or even higher. And normally you're right, Will. This movie wouldn't crack my top 10 list, right? I did love Midsummer. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen Hereditary, and I know you keep telling me to. But I'm just glad we're back to these types of movies being made. So I'm showing more of appreciation for these movies because what I've had to sit through for the last, which is just a lack of anything substance for me. right? So like I'm excited and completely rejuvenated with where we're going. So
Yeah.
Beau is Afraid, Ari Aster, that was my number 10. Hit me with your number 9, buddy.
All right. Number 9 for me is a movie called May December. It was a Netflix movie. It had Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, and directed by Todd Haynes. Is this in your top 10?
It is not in my top 10, so I'm going to give you the
Okay.
floor, but I did just watch this. It's based on a very infamous couple, and I'll let you kind of set the table for it. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, this makes my top 10 because of the two performances. One, Natalie Portman's performance was absolutely incredible. I thought she's so, she locks you in. Like the scene where she's talking to the theater students in the high school, and she's just going on about, that making love on scene or on screen. That's about us, right? That scene is about the viewer, because we can't stop looking at her in that scene because she's so able to grab your attention. She's probably a top 4 actor living right now. I can't believe she's not nominated at least for this performance. And then is it Charles Melton? Is that the actor's name? I don't want to. I should have wrote that down. Oh, I did. Charles Melton. He plays the Julianne Moore's husband, the much younger than Julianne Moore, and he is a teenager trapped in an adult body in this movie, and his performance too is just he embodies that, someone who knows he went through a trauma but isn't willing to admit it until you get to those last couple scenes. And I just thought this movie, the performances themselves were transcendent.
Do you remember? I don't know what your household had when you were growing up, Will, but like my grandma always had the National Enquirer, stuff like that. And I remember this couple, like it was everywhere, right? It was on, it was just obviously it's a taboo against the law, a very, but she got pregnant and just relentlessly unwilling to apologize for anything, no remorse at all. And yeah, did you have any of that? Because when I seen this movie, because I just stumbled upon it on Netflix, and I was like, oh my God, this is about that couple. And it took me back. So I think more of my curiosity for just like my upbringing and like seeing it on my grandma's, nightstand all the time made me check it out. And I think it's a really good movie. I don't know that I necessarily looked at it through the same scope that you did. I definitely look at the performances that way. I was just taken back by a few other things, but like big thing to say about Natalie Portman, top 4 actor, huh? Like I'm a huge fan. Yeah. But that's a big take to put your claim on.
Oh yeah. I mean, just if you look at her last 5 to 10 films, everything she takes on, I mean, if you exclude her performances in the Thor movies, not really counting those, but everyone has a phase, right?
Hey, that was a money grab. Nothing wrong with that.
I was kind of pulling that out of my hat. It might not be true. I just saw a picture here of Cate Blanchett and was reminded she's probably top 4. So I'm sitting here thinking maybe I over-exaggerated a little bit. But every performance that she gives is committed. And her ability to take you out of your seat wherever you're sitting while you're watching a movie. I'm thinking of Black Swan here.
Yep.
And her ability to make you feel inside of the film is, I think, second to none. She just has that ability. So when she's on screen, it's impossible not to watch or be transfixed.
Well, what she does really well is she's obviously in real life, she's an intelligent human being, and she comes across that way in all of her performances, right? She just is, she's got small stature, but big presence in these scenes. And it's not by overdoing anything. Right. She's got subtle performances where she's not necessarily in your face, like a Sean Penn in Mystic River, like is that my daughter in there? And I love Sean Penn, but like he's going for it, right? Like I've never seen her really have something like that. Uh, but you don't need it. Sometimes you can almost, someone can whisper and draw you in and be just as impactful. So,
Yeah.
no, I did not have that movie on my list, but it is on the watch. So I did make the watch list of the 30 that I watched this year.
Okay.
We move on to my number 9, and my number 9 is one that made your honorable mention,
Yep.
Killers of Flower Moon. And I got to be honest with you. I watched it again today, and I actually nudged it back one. Um,
Mm.
I felt I needed another watch with this because when I watched it the first time, I was very excited to go and see this. The biggest Leonardo DiCaprio fan there is. I needed to go and see this. There's not been a film that guy has made that I haven't seen 100 times. I needed to see this again, and there's nothing wrong with any performance here. Like Leonardo DiCaprio is great. It's a pacing issue. And it's a movie that doesn't need to be 3.5 hours long. And it's one of those things where I just think Scorsese, and we've talked about this on the podcast here before, is like just has these great images that he wants to showcase. And he does it in a beautiful way. It's just
Yeah.
somebody needs to be there and say, hey, look, let's cut this here. Let's cut this one here. And he's earned the right to not have to. He's earned the right to put out 3.5 hour, movies. To me, it just felt like there was a pacing issue. With that being said, De Niro delivers a great later career De Niro performance. Yeah. He makes you hate him, right? By the end of the movie, you hate him. By the end of the movie, you're like angrier in hell at Leonardo DiCaprio. Why haven't you figured out a way to like redeem yourself? You know what I mean? And there's that moment at the end, even though he's killed people and even though he's robbed people, there's that moment at the end where you're still hoping he's going to like figure this out. And then when he goes out to the federal agents and he's like, nope, I'm right now. I'm on my right path now. And he tells them that he's not going to help him. Overall though, still it is great imagery. It still is Martin Scorsese. It's still this great cast. And you do get this brilliant, and it is brilliant, Lily Gladstone piece. And we talked about Natalie Portman kind of subtly bringing her presence to the screen. That's what Lily does in this movie. And you're sitting here with heavy hitters, Will, and yet still she manages, I'm not going to go as far as say she stole the movie, but she definitely balanced out the movie to a place that was impactful. So number 8 or 9 for me was Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, I felt so much guilt, Will, because I feel like this movie is supposed to be higher on the list. So when I heard it was honorable mention for you, I was just relieved. Thank you.
Yeah, and to be fair, if I were to watch it again, it might bump up and get a little bit more love from me. I just, I took a day off work to watch this movie. Man.
I know
like
you did.
I literally, I took a day off work so I could sit down. I don't get 3.5 hours to sit down and watch something. I don't. I'm gonna try to find time to watch Dune 2 in the theater, right? And it's gonna be hard because I just don't have time for it. So if you're gonna make me take a day off work, Marty, it's got to be perfect, and it wasn't quite. So
no, it wasn't. Hit me with your number 8, buddy.
All right, we talked about this one a little bit already. My number 8, Saltburn, directed by Emerald Fennell, Barry Keoghan, Jacob Elordi, Rosamund Pike. This movie's fucking hilarious, man. It's so goddamn funny. There are so many quips from Rosamund Pike. Spoiler alert, fast forward 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this, but after Carey Mulligan's character commits suicide and she said she's always been selfish, I literally was crying, laughing so hard. And, you said daring and it took risks and God, it just went out. It went out on the limb. I don't necessarily need to agree with it. It wanted to be what it was. And, Emerald Fennell took us there. She gave an interview that I was watching a couple of weeks ago. I rewatched Saltburn and was listening to this interview, and the interviewer said, why do you make these characters that are like not morally redeemable? And she kind of said, I don't think any of us are morally redeemable. And I kind of think that's what this movie is about. She just thinks people are not good. And, it can be a morose worldview, but she sure makes it funny. So, and then of course, Barry Keoghan is just he's another one of those young actors that is just, he gets it, man. He knows what to do when he's on screen, and man, I just, this was my number 8, and not perfect, but man, I loved it.
Uh, just to add a little to what you're saying, another reason that added to my excitement to 2023 is this kind of, I don't want to say resurgence, but like this kind of, even though they've been around for a while, it feels like to me there is a prominent, like new A-list class of actors that are here now, right? Now, I'll say that, and I'll say to you, like Timothée Chalamet, who feels like a young DiCaprio in some ways, and is not. I'm not the first to make those comparisons, right? Yeah. He takes risks. He takes on these movies that are different. He's not fallen to just like teeny bopper films growing up, or like staying in one lane. Now he's definitely made some of those, right? But like he's put out movies like Beautiful Boy, which is daring. He's put out movies like wasn't he in the movie with what is it? Your Name Is Mine, or was it the movie with Armie Hammer? Say Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name. Isn't that him that's in there with Armie Hammer?
Yep.
So he's damn near 28, 29 years old already. He's been around for a while, but now you take that and you have Barry Keoghan, and now we get introduced to like a Jacob Elordi, right? And some of these other guys, like an Austin Butler, like there's a new class of filmmakers, of A-list male actors that felt like for a while there might be like the dying breed, where like Leonardo DiCaprio feels like the last A-list actor that maybe we'll ever have. I'm not sure. There might be a resurgence of Hollywood here, guys. We might be getting it. I don't know. But to go off of this movie, you're right. Fucking hilarious. Barry Keoghan just captivating with his performances. Loved it. Just absolutely loved it. Bonkers. And the way, again, I love what you were talking about with morally redeeming, because we talk about that all the time. And I think TV and movies have really done a really good job over the last decade and a half, TV especially, of giving us characters that can't necessarily be, redeemed. And it's leaving us confused as a viewer, but damn, is it not interesting and compelling entertainment? So.
Right. Yeah, no, there's just so many, there's so many risks taken here. And, to bring it back to that Barry Keoghan, like that final scene, like, to put yourself out there like that, man, it's just, you don't see it often. So you just, at the very least, you got to respect what he's, what he's swinging around there, No, he just, man, I just couldn't have been more surprised by what this film did, going, into the depths of our weirdness and our grossness. And I'm all for it. So.
Yep. Sign me up. The next film, I wonder if this will be our first crossover. So I'm going to throw it out there. This is my number 8. And you used the word already on the show about curmudgeon. This movie is directed by Alexander Payne, and it is The Holdovers. And it's probably the most simple movie in my top 10. And by simple, I mean there's just a simple story and actors just giving it their all. Do you have this one on your list?
I do not.
Interesting. So it is so simple of a movie then. I watched this on a plane to Tampa, and if it wasn't for the just how much I found myself right before it landed caring, because I couldn't finish it in time. I was like, crap, I got to grab my bags. I actually stopped in the airport and watched the last 10 minutes because I cared. I cared about the actors. I cared about the characters, and I wanted to see kind of how it finished. Now, I will admit, this one jumped from 8th on my list. It's been 18th on my list. It's been everywhere in between. And I keep coming back to it because I think these movies matter. I'm going to keep saying this over and over. I'm glad these movies are being made. I think they're important. And I think the fact that you get a performance like you do from Paul Giamatti, who always brings it, like never seen him. I put him in that same class with, the gentleman who died. He was on Twister. He was in Big Lebowski. He was Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Seymour Hoffman, yeah. So just anything they touch, they're never going to give you a bad performance. Like Gary Oldman, right?
Yeah.
And it's just hard for me in this movie to not care for this guy. He's super angry. He's super not giving these kids the type of Christmas break that they deserve, especially the one. But like,
Mhm.
what a perfect kind of mismatched, dysfunctional family that came out of this at the end. And to top
Yeah.
it off, the performance that we get from Devine, is it Devine Joy Randolph? Divine Joy Randolph, who is
Yeah.
nominated and has been winning some of the awards around the way. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
dive too much into this movie, but to me, when I compared it to this and like Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm thinking to myself, this one is a story that maybe hasn't been told as much, right?
Hmm.
There's all stories have been told, but this one feels a little bit different, and I just enjoyed it for that matter.
Yeah. I guess I don't know what was missing for me. I mean, I have this at 4 stars. It's like right there, for me. I think it was just outside my honorable mention. So not that I didn't like it. I just think maybe I was looking for something a little bit more explorative, like about Paul Giamatti. It kind of feels like we get some of it, but not enough. And I really like the relationship that the three of them have when they're, just kicking around the school, hanging out together. I think everything works really well. And I think maybe for me, it's just that type of story, it has a limit for me. Like, I don't know, like it might be a perfectly told by Alexander Payne. So I think maybe it's just a limitation for me on what that story can do. I'd have to. I've also only seen it once. Sometimes when I see something a second time, it can grow on me a little bit. So, uh,
I think that's fair to say, and I think it's really simple. Like it's just a simple movie, right? And I think when you're comparing them with Best Picture candidates, and not just that, but like a whole catalog of movies from an entire year, it's like where does this movie actually fit? I have the top 10 movies in 3 tiers, right? So all of my top 10 movies are 4 stars or higher. This was a 4 star for me, and it's still in tier 3. And so will the next couple films be in tier 3. But when we start talking tier 2 and tier 1, to me, there is a substantial difference or an astronomical difference between my top 3 or 4 movies compared to like my bottom 7. So
yeah,
that
yep,
being said, hit me with your number 7, Will. We haven't got a crossover yet, buddy.
yeah. No, and we're not going to yet either. I can almost guarantee that you probably haven't seen this because it's animated. My number 7 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Um,
Okay.
So let me tell you something about this movie. I went and saw it with my daughter in the theater. The first movie is like perfect. Into the Spider Verse, maybe the best animated film of all time. It's doing something incredible with its visuals. It feels like a comic book while you're watching it, which a lot of times you can't really say when you're watching like the live action ones. It kind of just feels like an action movie that makes you laugh. But here you have like you have the way that they set these frames up is there's actually like sometimes will be word bubbles or sometimes when they hit each other there'll be like the bam or the pows and um, on top of that like feeling like a comic book movie there's something like incredible about Miles Morales' story, right? I mean the whole conceit of this movie is that he doesn't belong as Spider-Man. He wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. He's an accident. And this idea that despite what people think you ought to be, you being able to transcend that and become who you feel like you're meant to be, I think is just a really powerful story. And it's kind of the story of Spider-Man, but it's kind of reframed. Miles Morales is half black and half Puerto Rican, so you have a little bit of inclusion there, and then it also has other Spider-Man characters, so they're all kind of going through their own thing. So this movie is just I my daughter we well I probably shouldn't if she ever watches this. Santa got her drums this year, and because of this movie, she loves this movie, and Gwen plays the drums, and this movie is a movie that you can see why people love story because it means something to them and I really love this movie. So
Yeah, and there's also the the experience of sharing it with your daughter, right?
Yeah.
Like that matters. I don't have kids, and I don't fully, watch a lot of animations. There are every now and then there's animated movies that I go and see because they just hit me the right way. Like I remember
Mhm.
The Little Wonders, I think it was the name of it. I maybe I mixed. I no the Meet the Robinsons. Sorry, that was way off.
Oh,
Meet the
yeah.
Robinsons.
Yeah.
Coco is one of my favorite ones. I love Up. Those
Yeah.
types of movies. Obviously, Toy Story has a special place in my heart. Those types of animations, but like now you add the element of superheroes, and I'm really just not interested. And not
Yeah.
because I'm like a prude to superheroes. I love Batman. I never got into comic books. I never got into that world. I've always been somebody that's kind of like feet kind of on the ground, more ground roots of like human stories. But you're not the first to have said this to me of how wonderful this movie is. I have
Mhm.
another buddy, the only film critic, Nate Adams, who has mentioned this to me in past. It's doing something here that not every animation, or superhero movie does, and it's bringing another level. So I'm actually shocked that it hit your top 10, but now hearing your reasons why, not so much, buddy.
Yeah.
With that being said,
Yeah.
I think we have a similar. My number 7
Uh-oh.
is another thing that hits close to home as far as like the story of my life.
Mm.
Uh, where I've been in my first love and my continued love, and that is the art of professional wrestling. I love professional wrestling because to its core, Will, is
Yeah.
storytelling. It's good versus bad. It's underdogs rising up and overcoming. And then when you get these characters that are still attached to my childhood. Like we've
Yeah.
got, just for example, The Rock is back, and he's heel Rock again, and it's old school with new school, and yada yada. I'm not going to go on a diatribe about professional wrestling, but my point is like it is every bit of my favorite thing in this world because it is the one thing that continues to make me feel like a child, right?
Mm.
Where everything else in this life reminds me I'm an adult, and even to a certain extent, a failed adult, right? I have this perfect thing for me, and I love that I'm just always going to have it, I hope.
Yeah.
The movie is Iron Claw, and it was directed, it came out in 2002, but it's directed by Sean Durkin, and it's a movie that was out by A24 Studios. And A24, dude, if you know anything about A24, if you get that put on there, they are stamping. It's a stamp of approval. It's a movie that's going to, at the very least, whether you care about professional wrestling or not, it's got something that is
Yeah.
going to touch you somewhere. I'm not sure if you know who the Von Erichs are, Will, but this is a story about this incredible family down in deep South Texas. And I'm stooging off things, and this is a spoiler episode, so just have to stick with it. But the Von Erich family, unfortunately, there was 5 or 6 brothers, and all but one died. And it's just an incredible story about family, how to keep it together, whether they keep it together. And it's
Hmm.
focused on the main brother, who's played by Zac Efron. But we also get Jeremy Allen White in this movie, who puts in a great performance. And he, to me, is another one who, when he decides to leave TV, right,
Yeah.
is in that class with the Barry Keogans and the Timothy Chalamets. Like he's somebody. He reminds me of like a young Sean Penn. The performances in this movie, I really wanted it to get more Oscar love, and it's the movie for me which I wanted. What was I talking about? I wanted a good person to be. This movie was, and it hits on all
Ah,
cylinders.
gotcha. Yeah. And you mentioned TV. There was a show on TV, Murder at the End of the World this year. FX put on, and it was a pretty good show. It kind of fell a little flat, but that Harris Dickinson, who's in this movie, was in that show, and he's got something that you're drawn to when he's on screen. So I didn't get a chance to see this one. I should have put it next to American Fiction because it was on my list of movies that I wanted to see this year, and I just didn't quite get to it. Obviously, I love Jeremy Allen White. The Bear is probably the best TV show last year. best season of TV last year. And yeah, no, I definitely want to see this. I'm glad that it's good. Makes me want to see it even more.
Yep. Tell me your number 6, Will. Tell me your number 6.
All right. Yeah. So my number 6, oh man, I'm still kind of waffling here. I can't, I can't make up my, okay. So maybe I should just preface this by saying the next 6 movies are all like right there in that 5-star territory for me. This is how good this year was for me. Um, I,
I want
I
to stop you real
really,
quick.
yeah, yeah,
So far in your top 4 that you've, or your top 10 so far, 10 through
yeah,
7, you have 0 Oscar nominated Best Picture movies. Okay.
right.
How many do you have, just out of curiosity, in the remaining 6 that are Oscar nominated Best Picture?
5.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I've got
we're going to
one,
start hitting some crossover here. Okay.
I've got one sneaky one that's kind of lingering around in here that no one else seems to like, except for like me and like 3 other people.
God, tell me
So,
it's not Maestro.
oh God, no. That's number. I wrote this down in case we talked about it. Number 46 on my list this year.
Oh, good
That
for
movie can go
Maestro.
to
Wait, good for Maestro.
hell. Yeah. So no, the next 6 are all those movies where I haven't seen them all twice yet. I've seen 3 of them, 4 of them twice, and they're 5-star movies. So it's kind of one of those things where I can't quite make up my mind because they're all so close. But with number 6, I'm going to go Barbie. Greta Gerwig's, I think, near masterpiece that stars, everyone knows, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and America Ferrera, and surprise cameos by people that you're just shocked to see. Um, this movie is hilarious, first and foremost. I just think that the chemistry between Margot Robbie and I almost called him Ken, Ryan Gosling. It's incredible. And then, a lot of people, critics of this movie, kind of point at this idea like Barbie is, like feminism 101,
Right.
as it's like a critique.
Right.
And I think that's really stupid,
Yeah.
just to be frank, because do you have this coming up? Is it higher on your list?
This is my number 6.
Oh, that's amazing.
We
Okay.
matched perfectly on this. No, keep going. Now, I will
Yeah.
admit, I have this rated at a 4. It was a
Oh, okay.
4.5. I watched it a second time. I dropped it down. I'm not even really sure
Yeah.
why.
Hmm.
Maybe, I'll let you finish yours, and I kind of have an idea of why for me. But I want to keep hearing your
Okay.
thoughts on this kind of patriarchy versus women feminism type thing.
Yeah. So for me, really what it comes down to, the reason why I have this at 5 stars is because I think it's smarter than people are giving it credit for. And I think that really hinges not, America Ferrera's speech is incredible. We watched this with my daughter, actually. It was the first PG-13 movie we let her watch. And just watching it with her in the room, with my wife in the room, I was definitely crying at that scene, right? Because, it's real. I don't think there's any denying the things that she's saying in that speech, but I think this movie hinges on Robbie's performance, right?
Yep.
Because she's pigeonholed into something. She's the stereotypical Barbie, and the whole movie she's trying to be that, but she's not. And those scenes by the time we get to the end of the movie, she's scared of what comes if she's not being who she's supposed to be. And what we get anyway is her facing that fear and facing the difficulties of, the world that we occupy, and doing it anyway. And I just think there's something super powerful about that. And her I mean, she's captivating all the way around. But I think if you didn't think she was a good actress before this, then I hope that you're swayed now. So Barbie's my number 6.
Yeah, Barbie is also my number 6. I want to say this in comment to, I left the movie the first time. And yeah, I'm a man. I'm going to notice when things are anti-man, right? But things
Yeah.
have been anti-women forever that I can sit there and say, so what? right? I'm not offended by anything in this film. I know what they're going for. There's a place for anti-man in this film, right? And Ken explores that and he learns it and he brings what men try to do, which is try to take over things that women have created and mansplain and all these things. And Ken does that. He tries to bring that, right? So like this is the purpose of this movie is to play with gender and to play with, these types of ideas. That's what I love about this movie is it could have just been a straight out comedy. Barbie could have just been a comedy, right? Could have been like a kind of a ditzy, superficial type of thing. But it decided to go much, much, much deeper. And when you get to America Ferrera and her speech, dude, if you're a human being with a pulse, it should carry meaning to you, especially in 2023, because if you have somebody who has empathy for what the women's struggles. And the truth of the matter is, now, I think where I kind of have issue with not necessarily the film, but just maybe gender in general is this idea that I feel like women are harder on women than men are harder on women. And I think that needs to be talked about. Now, as a man saying that, it's like I feel like I'm out of my place saying that. But a lot of times I feel like a woman's biggest critic is herself or another woman. And for that, I didn't feel like that was talked about enough in this movie for a movie that was going through women's empowerment. And maybe that's where it feels like men are to be blamed for these things. So for that might be where it dropped down for me. But like, dude, America Ferrera's speech, every young girl, every father, every mother should show their daughters that. If I was still teaching, I think that speech is so incredibly true because I can't even imagine. I get to be me. I wake up, I'm losing my hair, I'm whatever, you know what I mean? I get to be me and nobody else is really going to criticize me for it outside of myself and my own insecurities. But like women are judging women everywhere they go, and not just women, but there are men that judge women, and they are being judged to a different standard that's not fair. And I thought the movie was impactful, and probably one that was higher on my list that after the second watch did drop. But yeah, I'm with you, Will. I think this movie it has a place, and I think Margot Robbie was great in it, and I see why Ryan Gosling is getting a Best Supporting Actor nominee too. I just can't believe that Margot Robbie was left off of it. But I will say this though, in defense, and the last thing I'll say, and I'll give you the floor, the remaining 5 movies that I have, 4 of the movies are anchored by a leading female. So it just might have been a tough year. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I am, I think you're right. There's definitely some in Barbie where they kind of talk about that a little bit, but they don't emphasize it, right? Where women are women's biggest critics. And I think it comes up in America Ferrera's speech. So, I think it's present, maybe not talked about enough, but I think the key here is, kind of in the pudding, right? It's in the sauce, and it's that the male dominated world is the first issue, right? And I think that's kind of, maybe Barbie 2, they can get into it a little bit more, right? But I think they were trying to tackle a really big issue with, while also being funny and while also making sure they're not going too far because they're towing a corporate line. And, I think you're right. I think there's probably, if you were to sit down and have a critical thinking course, like a class built around the issues with Barbie, you could definitely point to that as an issue. But I think ultimately for me, it just kind of fell on as a minor issue for me, and maybe a little bit bigger for you, which is why I think I liked it a little bit better. So,
well, again, minor issue, but now I'm comparing them to the top 5 movies I think of the year. Right now, I will say that number 5, I doubt you have. Number 5 is a number simplistic movie for me. I don't want to stooge it off. I want you to bring number 5 to the table now because we both had number 6. Last thing I'll say about Barbie, another reason I felt like the middle dropped off a little bit, like the Will Ferrell. I love Will Ferrell, but just like the chase scene, and it just felt a little long. And I thought sense. But like that's the only reason, right? I think it's 4.5 if they could have cleaned up the middle a little bit, not because of any of the gender issues. So,
okay. Gotcha.
Your number
Okay.
five, my friend.
Yeah, my number five is the least funny movie of the year. It's a movie about it's a little old family drama that takes place right outside of Auschwitz, called The Zone of Interest. This movie is devastating. I don't have a lot to say about it because I think if you're gonna talk about this movie, you really have to like think about what you're going to say because there's so much depth here without really um it's just a family drama, right? It's if you've seen this movie and you're looking for something that's going to be hypercritical about the Holocaust by talking about the Holocaust, then this isn't the right movie, right? This movie is about people people's ability to overlook evil things that are happening in their own backyard. And I think it's really important to understand that this movie is not just about evil being in the past, but evil being right here in our face all the time. And I think that final scene where the main character flashes to the future and sees what Auschwitz is now, is just a reminder that there's people being killed every day around the world, and we don't talk about it, or at least we don't think about it very much. And that last scene, the movie was really good, and then that last scene really just kind of cemented how great this movie is for me. And yeah, number five is Zone of Interest.
So, unfortunately, I see 9 out of the 10
Mm.
Best Picture candidates. I tried to get up to Ann Arbor, and I was going to do a double feature. I actually got up to Ann Arbor on the day you and I were going to go watch this.
Oh,
But I was a little later, and that movie showed at the time we were going to go see it, and they didn't have a second showing.
yeah.
So I ended up seeing American Fiction instead. I was going to try to get Zone or go back around and watch it. I just couldn't get to it. But the ideas that I've read upon it, because I wanted to at least have something to be said. It's tough. It's tough with what you're saying because it's like at some point as to be a human being in 2024, and especially one of empathy, right? Like I have empathy for everything going on in the world. I have empathy for um, when I watch movies, bad guys. I'm always asking myself, man, what happened in this dude's life to make this person this way? I have empathy for bad people, and I know that's probably not something right, but I just do. I'm an empathetic human being.
Yeah.
The problem is that today, it's like pick your cause. You know what I mean? If
Hmm.
I am to spend every waking hour talking, because they say that the enemy of oh, how does that old saying go? The enemy of hate is silence or something like that.
Mm.
You can't speak up on everything. You can't be an activist on everything. And even if you are, it's like, who's listening? Who's
Yeah.
listening? And it's tough. And sometimes it can feel like, well, I might as well just sit down and play Call of Duty for the 800th time and just make ourselves more mind numbing. So it's like, I think you just have to kind of pick your causes.
Yeah.
But like, dude, where do you start? So the zone of interest, I think, from what I've read, kind of makes you reflect on that a little bit,
Yeah.
all while showing you something very real that's happening, especially right now.
Yeah.
Right. So,
And I want to be careful there too, right? I'm not trying to. I don't want to sit here and say that I'm not subject to this, right? Because I think that's the major point. Is like um, no matter uh, how wonderful you think you are, like there's things that you're missing. And like I think it's an important thing to compartmentalize. If you've ever been in a really bad place and you start thinking about bad things, it's not good for anybody. I mean, especially not good for you. So like, I'm not sitting here saying like we should always be thinking about all of the bad things, but I do think it's important when things like this, when you're presented with this type of information, like the zone of interest, that you think about what he's trying to say and you start to think about your place in the world, maybe a little bit more in depth, so that that you at least pick a cause, right? So that you're at least driven by something that's important and not just, I'm subject and victim to Call of Duty as well. So, As long as there's a little bit more than just that in your life, then hopefully you're trying to be a good human being. That's all I think he's trying to ask here.
Fair enough.
And yeah, I thought about our podcast, our little journey here too, because the first 2 or 3 minutes of this movie is an overture. So there you
Is
go.
it really?
It was made for Cinema 100.
I can't wait till we get there in 2023. Um, we'll have to. I wonder when we get there in 2023, how many of these we draft, and what will our retrospective be then? Because things will change, right?
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
so my number five, or that was your number five. I'm sorry, my number five,
Yeah.
which is I think we're gonna have of the remaining five films. I think we're gonna have maybe two more, maybe three more that cross over.
Okay.
Um, I will stooge off my three and my five right now. I think are two that are not on your list. My number
Okay.
five is one that probably you would say, "Come on, Rob, really, really." But I'm going to tell you right now, this was a movie that was turned on the TV, and sometimes you're sitting there watching something that you never planned on watching. It was on the television, and you are just pleasantly surprised, and it sticks with you. And I think this movie stuck with me because I was a teacher for 7 years. I don't have kids, but I I get the importance of, and even with someone that doesn't have kids, I get the importance of just like self journeys. Anytime you get a movie that takes someone on a self journey, like that's my sweet spot. Like I love Into the Wild, right? Alexander Supertramp is me. It is a life that I want to live that I've never lived, right? Mainly because I am so insecure about being lonely. I want to take that trip with one other person, and you'd never see me again. This movie's called "Are You There, God?" It's me, Margaret,
Oh,
and it. I said Holdovers was probably a simple tale. This is just a story of a coming of age, and it's directed by Kelly Furman Craig. It's got Rachel McAdams in it, but the movie is really through the eyes of an 11-year-old girl, Abby Ryder Fortson. And, Will, when your daughter gets old enough, this is another one to check out because it's like, I know it's got God in the title, but like the idea of it is just this girl who's going through these changes, trying to find out what her place is in this world. So she's constantly talking to God. Like, hey, are you there? It's me, Margaret. I feel like you're forgetting me. And how
yeah.
often do we as human beings feel like we've been forgotten? And it's not until she learns how to change her mindset a little bit that she realized that, whether it's God or whether it's just, the power of positive thinking, things
Yeah.
are starting to happen in her life. And it hits me. It hit me right in a sweet spot. And I was just like, holy crap, why do I like this film so much? Now, I will stooge off that I am Rachel McAdams has been my number one for my entire life. And whenever she's on the screen, and this is her, in my opinion, this is one of her top five best performances ever too, because she's playing a more mature role that she hasn't played before in the past. She's someone's mother, and there's layers to that. So, yeah, I know it's not on your list, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because every time I kept looking at this movie, especially like comparing it to Barbie, Barbie's going for something, knowingly going for something a little bit bolder than what this movie is, but this movie hits and it doesn't have a lot of flaw parts to me where Barbie can be kind of, in spots. But yes,
Okay.
this movie was a 4.5 for me. This is the first movie that ventures into that tier 2 category for me. And I just really enjoyed it. So I'm sure not a lot of people's top 20 or top 10, but it was for me.
Yeah. No, definitely it's on my watch list. It's just one of the ones that kind of slipped through. I've heard that it's very, very good. Maybe not the big picture. I know that's a podcast that you're familiar with, and probably
Sure.
if anybody's listening to this, they probably know that podcast too. But I think they've talked about it before as being very good. So usually when they like something, I know I'll probably like it too. And having it on your list is reassuring. It means I'll probably end up liking it as well. So
Well, I hope I
glad.
didn't oversell it because it might not be your top 5, but
Oh, no. I really, you know me. We've been talking on this podcast for a few weeks, but we've known each other a lot longer than that. So, God's a very central obsession of my life as well. So I think it's just one of those ones that didn't quite get to. So I definitely want to see it. So,
sure. Hit me with your number 4, Will.
all right, my number 4 is Anatomy of a Fall.
So I'm going to
It's
stop you right there.
sure.
for about 4 weeks. 4 weeks, this movie was my number 3 movie. Okay.
Okay.
I watched a movie literally last night that trumped it and moved it to number 4. So it is my number 4 as well.
Oh, nice. Do you wanna go first? I went first on Barbie. Um, give give me yours.
Well, let me just set it up for people, just because I like to do that. Directed by Justine Triet, or Triet, however way you pronounce it. It is a French courtroom drama, and one that I've already kind of told that is the main, whether you call her protagonist or not, the main character in this movie is a female, and it's Sandra Huller, and she is phenomenal. Phenomenal. The one scene that sticks out to me in this movie is the fight scene between her and the husband, and when they're talking about him blaming her for his failures in his career, and her, in her success in her career, to just the way that the whole dialogue in that scene was just like perfect, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been in those types of boxing matches. I've been in that headspace where I've been both the success and both the failure, right? So I kind of seen it from both sides. Now there's a murder mystery here, right? And it's a woman suspected of her husband's murder, and their blind son faces a moral dilemma as the sole witness. I just really enjoyed the pacing. I really enjoyed the way they kind of layered the storytelling, kind of like Oppenheimer does as you're getting flashbacks and, present day. They did a really good job with that. And the whole movie is just carried really by Sandra's performance. And dude, I'm on pins and needles the whole time. And I do want to give a shout out to the little boy, which I don't have his name in front of me, but he's got a subtle performance, and something is going to give, and someone knows more than they're leading on. But yeah, this movie really, I thought, was really, really well done, and one that I didn't expect to like as much as I did.
Yeah, that child actor Milo Machado Grenier or Grenay.
Okay, yep.
It might be a top 3 all-time child performance. He was incredible. It was insane how good he was. But yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think one more thing too. Sandra Huller, she was in Zone of Interest as
interesting.
So this is quite the year for her. But yeah, this movie, the magic of this movie, and I think you said everything perfectly. The magic of this movie is that I think you can watch this movie as any person, and you can come out of there feeling one way about what happened, and it's all from subjectivity. This movie 100%. Is not about what happened; it's about what you think happened. And I don't know how she did this. I don't know how she made me feel a certain way without ever me knowing the truth. But I think that's saying something, right? We do this all the time. We don't have full knowledge of every situation. We draw conclusions anyway. It's what we do. And I think it's just incredible what she did here, because I felt this movie while it was happening. But when I got to the end, I was like, oh yeah, like she didn't do this. And then I was like, wait, did she? I don't know. And I think that's kind of the magic of the movie, is that the director gets you to a place, and like you and I could be in completely different places from the same information. And that's the point.
See, I totally agree with you. The idea of not knowing, right? Which it's like Inception, did the spin, or what do they call those things? Did the top fall? Did it not? It's open up to interpretation for a reason. A lot of people hate that. A lot of people are like, give me the answer. They get pissed. I just watched this movie for, however long it was, and I didn't get an ending to this. What was the point, right? The point is not the ending. The point is the journey along the way. And what did you bring to the movie? What are your thoughts? I thought it would have been a little bit interesting if, like, at the end, the boy and the mother are sharing the hug. He's going to bed. They're finally reconnected. And he's kind of given her reassurance that, like, she's off the hook, like, from at least his perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I thought it would have been interesting if, like, he alluded to the audience that maybe she wasn't for really, really off the hook. making us think that he was like, Mom, I know I told the court this, but in reality, you know, like, I know, Mom, that this happened, or like alluding that he knew something more than he did, right? Like that would have been something interesting, just to kind of like another twist at the end. But again, maybe that's the director giving us too much there. You know, doing it the way she did, she really left it open for the interpretation. And dude, just the dialogue, right? I didn't know French courts work this way. Why would I? I thought that was fascinating. But dude, the dialogue in this movie really carries it. It reminded me of a Tarantino film, and not with any way it was being delivered other than the dialogue. Or maybe I should say like a Kevin Smith, which is dialogue heavy. Just really well done, and she really hell of a performance. Really hell of a performance.
Yeah, no, this was, you know, I'm glad everyone, if you know this movie's good because they had subtitles and Rob loved it. Okay.
Yeah, that's so
that's
true,
the only
dude.
thing you need to know.
When I found out Zone of Interest had subtitles too, I was like, oh, maybe I'll move that one down.
Yeah,
no, it's hard for me to read.
I thought this. I already said it. This movie's script is magic. You can't write something this good and not be a great movie. You just can't. So the script and then also the performance of the mother and the son, just great stuff.
Yep, totally agree. Hit me with your number 3, Will. This is the one that my number 3. I was hoping you go first. I'll get to mine.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So this is my sneaky one. This was a movie by David Fincher called The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender. This movie also sneaky funny as hell. There's moments in this movie where, Michael Fassbender is just selling us on this idea that he's this perfect killer. He's selling us on this idea that he's, no one who has ever been a hitman has done it better. And then he, proceeds to almost die like 4 times in this movie because he fucks something up. And it's not just funny. It's, there's something. David Fincher has this like way. This felt like a direct sequel to Fight Club in certain ways to me because, in Fight Club, you've got those scenes early on when Edward Norton's character is he's looking at all the stuff in his apartment and he sees all the like IKEA magazines kind of come onto screen and he's like seeing the prices on the couches and the coffee tables. And it's, Fight Club's a first and foremost a critique of like consumerism. And here,
100%.
The killer, his first mark, the whole first half hour of the movie, he's in he's in an abandoned WeWorks office. And then he gets all this equipment delivered to him in an Amazon Dropbox in New York City. And it's like there's all these subtle little things that David Fincher is just so good at because I think he's probably the best cameraman director. He knows exactly what to show you in frame. He knows exactly what to give you to kind of make you know what's coming without knowing what's coming. And I just, I can't believe this wasn't talked about more. It wasn't liked by more people because I just thought it was perfect. And Michael Fassbender, is one of those actors who there's only a dozen or so people in the industry who can carry a movie all by himself. And that's what he does here. It's all Michael Fassbender and man, he's good.
No, he's really good. I didn't have this movie on there, and I got to be honest with you. So this is the only David Fincher movie I haven't seen. So for those of you that listen to me or listen to our show, if you follow me on Cinema 100 GIF, I have done a retrospective and ranked all of the David Fincher movies. I went back and watched them all in order, from The Game with Michael Douglas all the way, I know that wasn't the first one, but just, giving you an idea, all the way to his last piece of work. I'm kind of a prude, right? I am such a moviegoer, and I hate that this is just a Netflix movie. So a lot of times I'll need the people like Will. I'll need people like Nate who are like, no, you gotta get out of your own head. Just give this movie a watch because, it'll be worth it. I haven't got to it because of that. And I also seen that David Fincher signed another 3-year contract with Netflix. So I'm a little bummed because I chose David Fincher as my number 2 director to do because of the catalog of movies that he's done. He don't miss a hell of a lot.
Okay.
So I'm glad to hear you say that it's so high on the list. So this is the kind of the accreditation that I needed to turn back and watch it. I just know that the reasons for it come from a place of just deep rooted, that I'm going to have to get over. But that's where I'm at with it. So I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that you liked it as much as you did.
Yeah. Definitely. It's definitely a movie where you gotta be zoned in, man, because there's so much little stuff happening along the way, that if you're off for a second, you might miss something. So
Yeah.
you want to be on for this one.
So I'm very excited right now because I'm pretty damn sure that our top two films, whether they're 1A or 1B or 1 and 2, are the same two. So I'm going to hit you with my number 3, and it's a movie that I know we're getting a little long in the tooth here, but it is a special episode. It's a movie, Will, that I want to discuss. I
Okay.
thought this movie would be in your top 10. It was a movie that I almost didn't watch. Last night I looked online. I was like, you know what? I'm down to 2 films. I need to see these 2 films in the best Oscar nominated category. And it was Zone of Interest, and it was this movie, Past Lives.
Hmm.
And only reason I watched it is because Zone of Interest was $20 buy, and Past Lives was a $3.99 rental. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down and watch this movie directed by Celine Song, which I believe, Will, is her debut. That is impressive because this
Oh yeah.
movie's saying something. And it's something that, without getting too into my love life, it's something very I can relate to,
Hmm.
right? Nothing present, I want to make sure but that just something of like, I this is a movie about 2 childhood friends. They're reunited years later in New York for one fateful week as they confront notions of destiny, love, and the choices that make a life. To me, this is a tale of convenient love versus
Hmm.
passionate love that maybe you missed out on, and whether or not you should chase that passionate love and ruin everything you've created with a life with someone else that is built out of convenience that does grow to a connection to love, right? There is love there. The story between Arthur and Nora, there's love there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not built on it at first, but they ultimately get there. So in this movie, Will, and I'm just curious because I kind of want to talk about it. Um, I love the resolve of Celine's song here, right?
Hmm.
I think if this movie is made by anybody else, I think we get the 2 characters, Nora and Haesung. I think they cross the line,
Hmm.
right? But the
Yeah.
resolve that Nora or that Celine song shows in this, especially in that final scene, right?
Yeah.
The resolve that she has to not cross that line because they do have this past life love, right? And it's I don't know if there's ever been a movie that's more fitting to the title. I found myself, I have way more thoughts after watching this movie than I did. And I think I was with you. The last 60 seconds of this movie actually catapulted it to 3 for me because I really wasn't sure how I felt about the character Nora until she started bawling to Arthur at the end, right?
Hmm.
Because for a while there, I was like, it almost felt like, she was just kind of entertaining Haesung, and I'm not really sure that she ever was as on the same level as he
Yeah.
was with her. And then she
Yeah.
starts crying. And I know it's not fair to Arthur, but she started crying. And to me, it finally was like, oh my God, she does feel the same way as Haesung, but she's just not gonna jeopardize the life that she's built for that. So I don't know. I blattered there a little bit, but you tell me.
No, I really think this comes down, and I have this, on my review on Letterboxd, and it comes down to the first act when they're kids. I'm not convinced that the 2 kids are so in love with each other that this would happen, right? That they would be longing for each other when they're adults, when they're in their 30s, I'm assuming, early 30s. It just, the whole movie works except for that me believing that those 2 kids would be this in love.
Right.
That's I'm just not convinced of that.
They
If you
move.
convinced me of that, this might be my number 3 as well. But I just couldn't get there.
And I got there only for the fact that I just gave it the credibility, right? I gave it the benefit of the doubt. But even Kylie said to me, she goes, I feel like I needed to see more there. Like we needed, because they get to, the next 12 years so quickly. I want to say within the first 15 minutes of the movie, we're already there. Um, and I think that's a fair criticism of it. I think what they were talking about at the end, maybe it hit home a little more for me or not. I don't know, but the discussions that can come from it, it's just this idea of, are passionate lovers meant to be together? Does it work? Right? Because to me, there's a you have passionate love, but you'll have passionate fight or hatred, or not hatred, but it's just like
Sure.
passion,
Yeah.
the yin and the yang of it all. And like sometimes we do sometimes, it doesn't work with that first love that we wanted to work so well. And then you do meet something that's a little more practical because you guys are just happen to be in the same place in life. And that
Yeah.
that exists, and that's okay too, you
Yeah.
know? And then you guys lay roots in a life. And I just really enjoyed the fact that this movie did not give us characters that were unlikable. It can be mentioned like in the bar scene at the end of the movie where Arthur and two of them are sitting there and they start having their conversation. Even
Yeah.
the conversation that was had, although you could say is inappropriate, there's really nothing inappropriate being said about the present them. It
Yeah.
was all about, I missed you. This is why I'm here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it just did a very, very good job of not crossing any lines, which I think so often these movies, they take you there. The main
Yeah.
character will cross the line, they'll sleep together or they'll kiss or whatever, and then they want to come back from it. And I don't think they ever fully get back. So
Yeah.
this one was just a great what if story. And I think it's one that a lot of people might have some relatability to. So that's probably the last thing I'll say on it. But I was shocked that it wasn't in your top 10, but now that I hear why, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
And and to be completely honest, like as early as 2 weeks ago, I had this in my top 10. This is one of those years for me where it's like, I think I have about 15 movies that want to be in my top 10, right? And this is just one of the ones that, as I was making my list for the podcast, it didn't make it. Do this in 3 weeks, maybe it is in my top 10. I've got that May, December, Saltburn, Mission Impossible are all kind of fluid, right? And I
Yep.
feel like, yeah, Past Lives is right there. So the only other thing I'll say is you have to be careful of the romantic because they want to be romantic with everybody, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's I'm kind of saying that jokingly, but you have to be careful with romance because if you get addicted to that feeling, you just want to go on a series of second dates. So
Right. No,
yeah,
dude, and I could spend another hour just dissecting this film because it
yeah,
just hit me to, what you just said. A lot of my maturation process from where I was in early 20s to where I'm at now is just completely different. And a
yeah,
lot of it's because of the trials and tribulations and the failures on my behalf. Because I was still exploring life, you know what I mean? And still am to a certain extent, but not to the same degree. I'm not trying to have Kylie listen to this episode and get mad at me. But you know what I'm saying? I just
yeah.
I could dissect this film a lot longer than we did. But let's move on because I know we have the same top two movies. Now, whether or not they're in the same order or not,
I don't
so
know.
we're gonna find out. I'm gonna say this to you. I have went back and forth on this so many times because this is tier one. These both
Yeah,
belong in tier one to me. These are fives. You can argue, are they masterpieces or not? But I would say that they both still are. They're not perfect movies. Neither one of them are perfect movies in the sense of like, I can find flaws with them,
hmm,
but those flaws are so minute that it doesn't detriment to anything to the viewer, right?
yeah.
So give me your number two movie, Will, if you've actually settled upon one.
Yeah, that's I think the issue is I really feel like this is 1A and 1B. I really don't want to make the choice. I think what I'm going to fall back on is I've seen this movie only once, so I'm putting it at number 2, and that's Poor Things. Um, So I'll give a little bit of history here because I think I've seen more of Yorgos Lanthimos's films than you have. I've seen Killing of a Sacred Deer. I've seen The Lobster, The Favorite. I've seen those three films, and this is the first one that worked for me. The Favorite was really good. The Lobster's okay, and Killing of a Sacred Deer is also got Barry Keoghan in it, so he's got something, right? He's had something this whole time. It just didn't quite click for me. This one's just on another level. Emma Stone, if she doesn't win the Oscar, I mean, I understand like how good Lily Gladstone's performance was, but Emma Stone is like all time here in this movie. Poor, and there's just this is the movie I could talk about for 24 hours. There's a scene in here, and I just want to say this because I think you'll say other things, and maybe you didn't notice this because you're not a philosophy major like I was. The fact that she's transforming on that ship is maybe the most philosophical thing I've ever seen in a movie, because one of the oldest philosophical concepts is the ship of Theseus, right? The ship of Theseus is this idea of like, if you change the boat, the Theseus, as it's out at sea, board by board, and by the time it pulls into port, it doesn't have any of its original material. It's all new. Is it still the ship of Theseus? And it's this idea. It's about identity. It's about transformation. It's about becoming something else. And this movie is all about what Bella is becoming, and who she wants to be. And man, I was so thrilled by this movie. This is one of those movies that I actually went to this theater to see, which might have helped a little bit. And I can't say enough about how surprising this movie was, and how incredible the performances were, and also Mark Ruffalo. We'll talk about actor predictions. I don't think he's going to win, but damn it, he should. So
This is why you're my best friend. Will, everything you just said outside of the boat thing, which by the way is amazing, really fascinating conversation starter. To me, it would not be the same boat, right? Because she's not the same person when she gets on to when she gets off. Emma Stone, this is a life-changing performance, a career-changing performance. She went from someone who is already, right, considered to be a really brilliant actress and somebody who garners your attention when she's in a movie. She's done every type of genre. I don't even know what the genre is, right? It's sci-fi. Is it comedy? Is it drama? I don't know what it is, and I don't give a damn. I sat in a theater. There was me and like 7 other people. It was a big theater. I was in Florida, and I told you right when I was done, I texted you, and I was like, man, this makes Saltburn just feel like, I don't know what I said, but it was like something small, right? Something completely normal. Little House on the Prairie, right? It was the most off the wall, bizarre thing I've ever seen. I loved every performance in this movie. Mark Ruffalo is the perfect. This is the best Mark Ruffalo's ever been in my life, and I enjoy Mark Ruffalo. But damn it, dude, his performance in this movie is so next level. It is the type he had to match. There was a conversation between him and Yorgos Lanthimos where he's sitting there talking to him just as people. He goes, I am so scared. I'm so afraid of this script, of what you want me to be in this movie. And of course, Yorgos is like, well, I want you to be Mark Ruffalo. I want you to figure it out. Like, you can do this. I hired you. You can do this. And he's like, no, I can't do this. And every day he needed reassurance that what he was doing was what he wanted. And I get it, because there's nothing like this before, right? I mean, and if there is, maybe I just don't have a big enough knowledge to draw from. But this movie, not only is the performances new, the story, which not necessarily new, it's Frankenstein in a way, right? But like the world in which Yorgos creates, is so fascinating. It's like a mixture of sci-fi, but with contemporary, or with an old, 1900s landscape type thing. You're right. There's what theme, what category do you want to talk about? This movie was just next level, unbelievable. It was my um, broken cherry to Yorgos, and you're right. I wasn't drawn to the rest of those. This one I genuinely was. The dance
Yeah.
scene. I am obsessed with the dance scene. Mark Ruffalo's face, just the little details on his face, dude.
Yeah.
He's completely in over his head with this woman that should not be um just owning him mentally, like living rent free in his head the way she is. And then there's
Yeah.
the whole story of whether or not this is a movie that should be being made. I mean, we're talking about an adult woman, but it's a child inside of her.
Yeah.
It's just, it was
Yeah.
awesome. And it was my number one movie for like majority of the time. And it wasn't until Peacock came out and released, Oppenheimer for one, or for its second showing, that I sat down. I've seen Oppenheimer now 3 times, and it's not a movie I should watch 3 times. So we'll get to that movie. But like Poor Things, if that movie was out right now and I could watch it again, I would. But Emma Stone's performance was just so brave. There's so many different areas you could talk about. I just love that it's number 2 for you and I, because it means we had the same wavelength going forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And, just kind of speak a little bit about that, like Emma Stone, like having the, being a child in a woman's body, like I think that's kind of the point, right? The point isn't like, it's not just that she's self-discovering, right? It's that people know something's wrong with her, right? Something's off. Something's not quite adult about her, but they still are romanticizing her body, right?
Right.
There's still desire her body. So I think there's something going on there about like, hey, like,
Commentary.
it's a commentary on what we do to women, right? And we objectify, I hate saying that because it's so cliche, but we objectify women. It doesn't matter
but not just women, Will. It's the
Yeah.
obsession with young women.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's that what's the movie, or not the movie, but the oldest, what's it, Lola, what is that
Lolita,
that book? Lolita, right? It's that obsession, and he's showing a mirror to society, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like this movie, he's always been philosophical in his other films. There's always something kind of underlying the main details of the film, but the whole thing, there's a through line of like just what everything feels real. That world that he created feels real. I didn't, after the first 5 to 10 minutes when we get to color, like I just stopped asking questions because I trusted him.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter like what's going on. It doesn't matter what the world actually is in our world. That world's real enough, and it's just a great movie.
It is a great movie. And this is what I was saying earlier about like, I'm just glad we're at a place where this can be made and seen and now is in the running, right? I mean, movies like this kind of always find their way to be in the running for Academy Awards, but like, it just felt like we were never going to get back to this place. And I'm so rejuvenated by 2023. And, this is a movie that maybe normally I wouldn't be on board with, but like, it worked so well. Let's get to number 1. All right. Give me your reason why you finally placed it at number 1. I just gave you mine, and it ultimately came down to the fact that I'm obsessed with this movie, and I want to watch it again. It's a 3-hour movie that I want to watch for the 4th time.
Yeah.
And it's a talking heads movie that just has a build similar to an atomic bomb, and it just builds and builds and builds. And just tell me why you finally put it at 1.
Yeah. It really, I think it comes down to what I identify more thoroughly with. And I think with Poor Things, there's a sense of like, there's just an optimism at the end of the movie, right? About like what the world can be for a person, and in particular a woman. And I appreciate that, but I don't synthesize with it, right? Not fully, because I'm such a cynic. And Oppenheimer, where it ends with Cillian Murphy and I can't remember the gentleman who plays Einstein, but the conversation that they have at the end of the movie there just really puts into view what I kind of think, right? Like we're slowly killing ourselves, right? And this movie does that while also like telling an incredible story about the things the we're killing ourselves, yes, but look at these incredible things that we can do. If we could just turn these incredible things that we could do into a positive outcome, if we could just do things for the good of humanity, all of these things could be good, but they're not because we suck. And that's Oppenheimer to me. And all the other Christopher Nolan stuff that I just love. When the beginning of the movie, you have the stuff that Cillian Murphy's seeing. He's seeing the atoms. He's seeing the everything spinning. He's seeing all the molecules, and that thread all the way through the movie to where we get to the atomic bomb, and then he's coming to terms with what he's done without fully understanding what he's done, or at least not wanting to believe it. And yeah, I mean, there's just something to Nolan's use of sound. There's just something feral about it. There's something like that hits down deep that every movie, it doesn't matter. Like Inception's weird and doesn't necessarily work all the way for me. But when that music, he's just so good at putting everything into a picture for you and giving it to you. And Oppenheimer it's just another 5-star movie for me.
Yeah, no, it is. And, a couple things you said that I just kind of want to take and run with it is I remember Denzel Washington saying, or Will Smith said on his speech that night, the infamous Oscar night, Will Smith said that Denzel Washington told him that the devil comes, be careful because the devil comes for you at your highest moment, right? And I'm kind of reaching here when I'm connecting these two, but like this idea of both our greatest strength and our greatest, like the thing that will ultimately lead to our doom is our curiosity to go forward and to go further. And I think this movie just balances that so perfectly. You get this sense of like Robert Oppenheimer is so incredibly proud of this accomplishment, so incredibly of like, in the sense of like they fulfilled this job, right? And there is a sense of rejuvenation within his step to the public in the way that he goes about it. When does his moral qualm really show its head? Because it does get there. But what's up to the, kind of the viewer is this: when does it happen? When should it have happened? Inevitably, we're going to go forward because the curiosity is we're too curious to know any better. We're going to fall off the cliff eventually because we want to know what's down there, what's on the other side. It's too smart of a movie for me. I had to watch it 3 times to fully make sense of it all. And I've got a better grasp on it now than I ever have. But just as far as keeping up with the, the characters and the storylines and whatnot. But yeah, man, I felt like the reason this movie ultimately landed number 1 for me over Poor Things was because this movie, it's so very difficult to be the movie everyone's talking about prior. Then once you see it living up to it, and then maybe even being bigger than that. And I think Nolan's made a career of doing that. Mainly because he cares about his script. He cares about the overall craft, the sound. He knows how to trigger people. I think he falls flat on characters sometimes because maybe in his eyes, they're not as necessarily as important to the story. There's so many things that could be said about this movie. I just thought it was brilliant. And the reason I kind of struggle to find words is because I'm not really sure where we should start with it. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start scene 1? Do you want to start with the, the moral qualm? Do you want to start with the performances? Where do you want to start? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you said something about characters there, and I don't know if I feel like he's probably said this before in an interview, and I'm just recalling it a little bit here, but like characters is just another equal piece of the puzzle. Like the movie viewing experience for Nolan seems to me to be like, I have, there's 15 pieces that need to fit for me to make this movie, and they all have equal percent like importance. So like character for him is just as important as sound design. Sound
Yes.
design is just as important as plot mechanics. And one thing that he kind of, I the critique of Nolan that I've always understood but don't care like about is that exposition issue that he has, where a lot of his dialogue feels like exposition because it is.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't care because it keeps working for me, and maybe that makes me a little bit more simple. um, but like eh, this movie it excels in making sense of itself without making sense to you the first time you see it, because we saw this in theaters
Yeah.
together, and
Yeah. And
the
I felt
first time
like
I
we
saw it,
didn't
I was kind of
really.
like,
I'm sorry. I just felt like when we were trying
yeah,
to we were trying to talk about it afterwards. We were still processing what we just seen. Right. It was
yeah,
so. There's just so much to it. Again,
mm,
it just comes down. It's like we desperately want to have a conversation on what we just saw,
yeah,
but it's like, where do we start? And I am still kind of struggling with it because there's just so many layers. There's, like you said, he cares about 15 pieces of the puzzle equally. So now we're trying to attach ourselves to, all right, what piece do we start with? So
yeah, yeah, and that just kind of comes down to like he everything that he does in his film is perfect. Like so there's no missing pieces. There's no like for him like there's everything adds up and equal gets to the end exactly how he wants it to. And sometimes that's hard, right? Especially with Oppenheimer, because there's so many different kind of moving timelines. There's so many different kind of like characters at play that it doesn't make full sense that first time you watch it. And then I think it's really not until you watch it multiple times. I've only seen it twice, but where it's everything starts to feel like it was meant to be, right? It's inevitable. And I think that's just kind of how he is as a filmmaker. His endings, his meaning, his everything's built in and meant to be. And Oppenheimer, Tenet is kind of the exclusion there a little bit, because Tenet's more like fun than it is, you know, meaningful in any sort of important way. But Oppenheimer really kind of gets back to that other, the normal Nolan uh, world building. So
yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
ask you uh, a question, but I'm not gonna make you stick to it. Okay.
okay.
Because I've asked myself this after watching it the last time, and I just don't know yet, right? Um,
Mhm.
where does it fall? Because I know you're a big Interstellar guy. I love Interstellar, right?
Yeah.
I still had Dark Knight just above it, just because of
Mhm.
Interstellar. I love the world of Interstellar. I think more what it's going for, but
Yeah.
Dark Knight to me, just like because of Heath Ledger, there's so much that went with it.
Yeah.
This movie's in there for me, man. It's up there. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know. It could be one, it could be two, it could be three, but I think
Mhm.
I think it's officially past Inception for me, and I
Mhm.
love Inception because I like the idea of it, right? Um, but I do think that this movie, it very well could be one. I'm just gonna ask you your way too early prediction of where it would fall for you.
Yeah, I mean, nothing. I don't know if he could make another film that I'll like more than Interstellar, because I don't know if anyone could make a film that I like more than Interstellar. I think Interstellar is, on any given day, I'm going to say it's my favorite movie of all time. So Interstellar is probably always going to be one. Oppenheimer's right there in that kind of 2, 3, 4 conversation. I like Dunkirk a lot.
Interesting
The way he manipulates time in that movie, the way it's kind of like three different simultaneous um,
storylines.
stories that are unfolding together but not really unfolding together, and that not really making sense right up front, is kind of incredible to me. So Dunkirk's kind of in that conversation too. So it's probably, I would say right now, it's probably three after Interstellar and The Dark Knight.
Interesting. Well, buddy, we did it. That's our
All right.
top 10. I thought we might have more crossovers than we did, but you know what? I knowing you and knowing me, should have known better. I should have known better. I think we should break down, because we've got 2 hours into this thing. Let's go through the categories. We're just going to do the top 6 of the Oscar nominations. Best Picture, Best Male Actor, Best Female Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, and then finally the Best Director award. So let's start with like how they would do it. We'll go supporting. We'll do Best Female and Best Male, and then we'll do Director and then Movie. Obviously, we're giving now. You've heard what our thoughts were as far as what we thought the best movies were. This is what we think is going to win. Now, with the as far as the actors go and the director the other 5 categories, tell me both who you want to win and who you think is going to win. Okay, so let's go with the first one. Tell me what the category is and who's in it.
All right, so we'll start with actor in a supporting role, mostly because that's the first one on the list here. I'm going to try to be efficient. So, actor in a supporting role. The 5 nominees are Sterling K. Brown for American Fiction, Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon. We've got Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer, Ryan Gosling for Barbie, and Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things. So, what I think is going to happen here is probably Robert Downey Jr. He's been winning a lot of the other awards here. It's a pretty masterful performance, honestly. And in any other year, I'd probably be on board with him winning. But I would like to see Mark Ruffalo win here, just because it's a brave performance, Robert. It's just an incredible performance. So, I would love to see Mark Ruffalo win, but I'd be okay with Robert Downey Jr. winning as well.
Everything you said, I agree with. Everything you said, I agree with. I just want to make sure that we're giving, like, I love Robert Downey Jr. and it was really incredible performance. He brought the, it really shows within that character too, with his obsession with what was said between Einstein and Oppenheimer. It just shows you his ego, right? And it plays out throughout the course of the movie. But Mark Ruffalo went for something completely different. He's more, I can say this, he's more vulnerable in his performance than Robert Downey Jr. is in his, and probably more actors can pull off what Robert Downey Jr. did than what Mark Ruffalo did. And I'm not taking anything away, but like the truth of the matter is that's probably true, because Mark Ruffalo was now one of one. When we think about Poor Things, he could have been overshadowed by Emma Stone so much because she was so brilliant in this movie. And he just wasn't. And I just found him captivating. He was comedy, he was drama, he was tragedy. It worked so well. It was so great.
It was very, very great.
So I actually am going to go out on a limb. I'm hoping the Academy sees it too, and I'm going to go on a limb and say that Mark Ruffalo is going to win the Academy Award.
All right. Well, there you go. First bold prediction here. I just can't see it. But I would love to see it. So. All right, so actress in the supporting role, we have Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer, Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple, America Ferrera in Barbie, Jodie Foster in Nyad, and Davine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers. I think here, I really think America Ferrera is going to win. I think some of that is because of kind of the Barbie snub, right? I really think that there's going to be a push for her. And some of this, if you pay a little bit of attention, some of it is kind of about campaigning, right? So I feel like there's going to be a lot behind America Ferrera here. So I would be shocked if she didn't win. But I really feel like Emily Blunt here would get my vote. I think what she did here was pretty impressive, especially in the scenes where, everyone kind of talks about when she's kind of on the hot seat there during the disposition or what is the word I'm looking for? Deposition. But the thing where she's really good are the moments where she's being a mother. It's hard to put yourself out there like that about being a parent, because being a parent can be really hard sometimes. And, I just thought she was all around very, very good here. So.
I get that. I think she had I think that was a captivating performance that I've never seen Emily Blunt do.
Mm,
And I think it was great that it came at the end and she was so, she was trying to rev it up, like, why won't you fight them, type of thing. More reserved throughout the middle of the movie. And then we get there at the end with her. I just don't think there's enough of her, where in these other movies like Divine Joy Randolph, I think she's sprinkled in throughout the whole movie and does
mm,
a really phenomenal job of just like, especially what I liked about her character, especially in the way she brought to it was she lets Paul Giamatti be Paul Giamatti.
mm.
And she's so her, right? Instead of
Yeah,
like, because he's a, he's a professor at this thing. She might act a different way to him. They have a genuine, weird, dysfunctional friendship. And I thought she did a really good job of bringing that on the screen. So I'd like to see her win it.
mm.
Ultimately, I think she will win it. So,
Yep. All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Little
And
little
America
factoid
Ferrera,
here.
I think, sorry, real quick. I would
Yeah.
be happy. I'd be happy with really, three people in this category if they won it. I just don't think she's going to get it. I just don't think she was in
Yeah.
it enough to have those types of scenes repeating. She had that one
Mhm.
big moment, which is amazing. And I
Yeah.
think that will be her crowning moment in life, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
not in life,
Well,
but in the movie. So,
yeah. um, the fun factoid I was going to kind of spit out here was Anthony Hopkins won Best Supporting Actor in Silence of the Lambs, and he was only on screen for 9 minutes. So, little,
yeah, no, fair enough. That's
little
a
for you there.
captivating 9 minutes, though, Will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about Emily Blunt. All
Fair
right,
enough.
so we move on to actor in a leading role. We've got 5 nominees here as well: Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. What I want and what I think is going to happen is also the same. So Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. This is one
I
of the
don't even
best
think it's
performances
close.
we've seen in a while. Yeah.
I don't even think it's close. I think I would say this. I think what Bradley Cooper's going for,
Mm,
he had an amazing performance, especially that 6 minutes where he's actually conducting, right? And he really
yeah.
committed full body soul to it. Like there's not an issue with that. There's an issue with the movie. Um,
Yeah.
I could see, not that I could see it here. I could see him winning best or actor if this movie wasn't made, if Oppenheimer wasn't made, Murphy wasn't in it, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think, I think it's one and it's won by a long shot. So
Yeah. And it hurt. I think it hurts him a lot that Tar came out last year and was just a superior film in
yep.
every, sense of the word. And I think Kate Blanchett was also superior and probably should have won last year, but that's another story. So actress in a leading role, we've got 5 nominees. Annette Bening in Naiad. Did you see this?
I did not. It's sitting there on Netflix to watch.
Yeah. It's
I
good.
kind of want to watch it. It's one that I'll watch with my grandma. So
Okay, yeah, it's good, worth a watch. I
yeah,
don't know why she's nominated, but worth a watch. Lily Gladstone, Killers of the Flower Moon, Sandra Huller for Anatomy of a Fall, Carey Mulligan for Maestro, and Emma Stone for Poor Things. I think that what's going to happen is Lily Gladstone is going to win here. I think there's too much behind her that and her. I mean, I don't want to say that like I think she doesn't deserve to win because her performance is incredible in Killers of Flower Moon. But what I want is Emma Stone to win for this because I don't know how you can watch this movie and not just be like just one shocked and two just floored at her performance. So
yeah. Killers of the Flower Moon is more of an Academy Awards movie. Poor Things is not, right?
yeah,
I do think the last decade, the Academy has shocked us in some semblance. Now, what I wish they would do is I wish the politics would be taken out of it completely.
yeah,
But it is what it is. Um,
hmm
I think Lily Gladstone had an amazing performance, but I think she had the third best performance of these five. I actually think Sandra Huller's performance is better in Anatomy of Fiction because there's just more range. Um,
yeah,
but Emma Stone, in my opinion, I think she will win. Again, I'm
yeah,
putting a little faith in the Academy because I just think, I don't think that the difference between her and her fellow candidates is as great as Cillian Murphy's is. But I do
hmm
think there's a substantial gap there, and I think she should win. But I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. We'll see.
All right. Well, I'm hoping. All right. So for directing, five nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, Justine Triet, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, and Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. All five of these directors had incredible stuff this year. Um, it's really tough. I think who's going to win is probably Christopher Nolan. It kind of feels like his time, right? To make an R-rated 3-hour movie that made almost $1 billion, like is I don't even know what to say. But who I want to win, it's so hard
I
because
know, dude.
man, it's so hard. But I think I'm leaning Nolan here because I just have so much history with how much I've loved him, and I think I'm pulling for him here on this one.
So Nolan is probably my favorite director. I want Nolan to win because of that. I would say of all the categories, I'm not sure they're all deserving.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that you can't argue that Yorgos should win this, right?
Yeah.
That would be my number two. I don't know if that was who your number two was leaning towards, but
Hmm.
like, I, I think I want Nolan to win, but Yorgos presented such an extraordinary different world that is so unique. But with that being said, I think Nolan will win because in order to pull off this magnitude of this film, the way he did, and for it to live up to the hype, I think Nolan deserves the win as well. I just think if Yorgos was the win, I could understand why.
Yeah. Yep.
So
No, I'm right there with you. All right, and then Best Picture, we've got 10 nominees in alphabetical order: American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. This feels like Oppenheimer's year. I just feel like that everything's kind of leaning Oppenheimer here, and I this is probably the first year since 2017 when Moonlight was the Best Picture winner, where I feel like there's 3 or 4 movies where I'd be just fine with them winning, because there's 3 or 4 movies here that are just great in my opinion, but I'm hoping for Oppenheimer to win here as well.
yeah, I think Oppenheimer will win. Again, I all the reasons we've stated already.
Yeah.
I just be fully shocked. I don't even think Poor Things is in their top three. This is how if I had a gun to my head, what do I think it is? I think it's Oppenheimer, probably Killers of the Flower Moon, and they probably love it on Maestro somewhere. I have no idea because that's just kind of what they do. I think we all agree that Oppenheimer was our number one, but again, it's 1A, it's 1B. You could argue for 2 or 3 other films. I just don't think that they had the type of, like if the Oscars want to do what the Oscars do sometimes and like give it to Anatomy of a Fall, it's like, that's a damn good movie. Like, I get it. It's a damn good movie. I just think Oppenheimer deserves to win it. So we'll see. I'll be shocked, but who knows? They've done it before.
Yeah. So, all right, those are the big categories we're looking forward to. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun night next Sunday. I always watch the Oscars. I don't know if you get to them every year or not, but it's one of our, when we used to watch movies all the time, we'd print up sheets and have a little guessing game, Molly and I, but we don't get to do that as much anymore. So,
Yeah, so I used to watch the Oscars pretty religiously every year. And then when COVID happened, I don't know what happened. If it just kind of messed with my, movie. I don't know. Something just happened there. Maybe because the theaters shut down. Maybe I was busier in life. So like the Oscars is my number one thing. Like I have a romanticized thing with the Oscars. I'll go back on YouTube and I'll watch clips upon clips of old speeches or just old performances. I have this weird kind of patriotic, I think I've talked to you about when it comes to with Hollywood. That to me is just very American. So I like Jimmy Kimmel. I wish we had someone like, I really enjoyed like Seth MacFarlane and stuff like that when he brings a little class to it, a little old school, new school. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, especially because of the fact that this is probably the most movies I've seen on the list ever in my lifetime. So I'll have more of a, a care, I guess. So.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely excited. So hopefully, I know we're not going to be talking after it that because that's too late for me, but definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, when they wrap up around 2:30 in the morning, I think maybe I'll send you a text. So,
Yeah.
but all right, man. Well, we did it. That was our list of 2023. I know when we actually get to 2023, like we said, it'd be interesting to see if we still look at these movies in the same scope that we do now, or if society has told us that we are bigots and all these other things because of our thoughts at this time. Because who knows? Life could be going backwards. I see they're doing some weird marching in Nashville now. So hopefully we can continue to be on a righteous path. And, don't want to get too political there, but you get the point. So just,
Yeah.
Will, I enjoy the ride, enjoy the 2 hours, and we will get back to our normal, things when we get to the second half of 1929. So,
All right. Sounds good.
all right, you guys keep watching movies. We'll talk to you later.